Good morning and welcome to the Craft and Calling podcast. I'm here with Chad Gill, and I'm super excited to talk today about the transition between president, owner, runner of the business to entrepreneur, and also just the qualities and ethics that constitute the leader necessary to know who you are well enough to make a decision like that, and then also just kind of some of the stories and the meat on the bones of the person that it requires in order to lead well. So, Chad, I am so happy you're here. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Delighted to be here. I don't know if I can fulfill all of those, but I'm happy to be here.
We'll do our best. Well,
Yeah.
honestly, I'm so excited to resume the story that you were telling me about. We were talking about where you live, which is in Midlothian, well, just outside of Midlothian, Virginia, and you were telling me some of your backstory of going to Virginia Military Institute, and you mentioned something about your parents. So I'll go ahead and hand the mic over to you about who you are. And then if you can just kind of share some of that story that you were sharing with me, it was very interesting and it was funny. You're a good storyteller.
Yeah. So thank you. And yeah, so grew up in Amelia, which is kind of outside of Chesterfield or Richmond, that kind of thing. It used to be much further away than it is now. We had a blinking light. Now they have like I think two stoplights. It's quite the progression.
Really expanded,
Yeah.
blown up.
Big time, big time. Probably going to put a data center there soon. So yeah, grew up there. Grew up on a farm. Like a not a real farm. We just had like cows and raised hay. Not like we had friends that were real farmers, and I love that. That was probably like my foray into engineering because it's like my tractor's broken and I have these three things to make it work with. So that worked into it. Loved it. It was great. It's a small town, so it has its pros and cons. But like I have these few moments of clarity where I make a good decision. And when I was applying for college, I got into, JMU and Virginia Tech and, all the standard stuff. And then I was at VMI. My brother went to VMI.
Hmm.
And so one of the things I always remember about my brother was like his group, VMI group was always a group within a group, so it was like a one big,
Mm.
I don't know if that's good or bad, but it's just what it is. And so I went up and I was like, I think that's where I need to go because if I go anywhere else, I don't think I'm going to make it. It's like I could do like maybe one pull up and a couple of sit ups. I could run to the refrigerator. So I was like, I think I need to go there in order to be able to do anything at all. So go to VMI, and it was funny because just kind of I don't know, I guess an intersection of a lot of events, and my parents ended up going bankrupt. And I also senior year had a disease called Graves' disease, which is a terrible name for something that's not that bad. It's an overactive thyroid, which means I had to have my thyroid removed. But I had a pretty good deal. I was up for a 3-year Army scholarship to go there, but my parents going bankrupt. I mean, we didn't have money, but
Mm.
scholarship. And then they found out about this Graves' disease. So they're like, "There's no scholarship," but I'm already there. And my parents are fighting to make sure I can still go because they were going to not let me in VMI for the same reason. But in the end, I ended up being able to go, and some friends of my parents loaned me enough money to do my freshman year, rat year, which is the best year there ever.
Can you
Uh,
explain rat year for those who don't know what that means?
Rat year is the year you look at for the rest of your life and go, well, it's not as bad as that.
That's forever the hallmark of what's worse.
Right. It's not that I enjoy being around people that are more miserable than me. So for me, rat year was great. People hate it. It's a lot of physical fitness. They're like, they'll ask me like, oh, how many push-ups do you need to be able to do to get to be good at rat year? I was like, it doesn't, it's not, one more than you can do. It doesn't matter. You can't do enough.
They love watching you miserable. So it's a good sign that you enjoyed watching your fellow classmates be miserable. That probably kept you going.
I got in trouble way more for laughing or making other people laugh and stuff. That was like that's humor and sarcasm have always been kind of my hallmarks. And
I
so
love that.
it's a physically demanding, it's emotionally demanding. I kind of glaze out. I mean, I kind of enjoyed it. I mean, that's sadistic, perhaps. I don't know, but so anyway, you go through that year and you're getting that done, and then when it was made, clear to me that, these circumstances are happening. And I'm like, look, you're not going to have any money. So, my first semester was a 2.1 GPA, which is pretty good for that year, but, which is sad. But I was like, this is my money now, and this is my future and stuff like that. So I had to,
Mm.
and then I had the last great influence, which was I got busted for an alcohol #1, which means you were drinking in barracks, like the same thing every college student is doing. I'm sure my kids, I'm sure, are doing it and shouldn't. They're not at VMI though. But what that means is you get 4 months of room confinement, barracks
Wow,
confinement.
4 months.
4 months.
Chad, good Lord.
I was used to being grounded. I had a smart mouth, so it was probably good. I've been training for that through my teenage years.
Yeah, you've been prepping for this moment.
Yeah, it's like, this is what my parents made me ready for. And I never really had to study in high school. So, I get this 4-month room confinement. Anywhere you want to go, you have to sign out for it. This is when Friends was really big. So once a week, you can have 20 minutes a week in the X, which is like watching TV. And so Friends was like this big thing. So I would sprint down, I'd sign out, I'd sprint down, I'd watch Friends on a commercial, I'd sprint back, sign back out, and then sign back in, because there's only 20 minutes of show in a half-hour episode. So I could watch Friends with my friends. It was
I
ridiculous.
love this. Well, and Friends, man, that show is so iconic. So I love
Oh,
that you got to have that experience.
yeah. My kids rediscovered Friends about a year and a half ago, and they're like, you should watch this. I'm like, y'all should
You're
stop
like,
watching
you have no idea. I'm the OG. So VMI, just to expound on that a little bit more, the naming of the buildings, you said the X, the barracks, it was very much like you're in a military setting, you wear a uniform every day.
me. Right.
Hay down is when you actually get to have your bed down, and it's not really even a bed, but hay down is when you're allowed to take naps throughout the day, but otherwise you've got to keep it up. You've got to keep, like, it is a legit military school that is awful unless you love pain, which it
Right.
sounds like you do. Um, and so one thing that was interesting to me is, as you're talking about your experience of your parents going broke and you having this 2.1 GPA, which, to your point, during rat year, they are beating you into the ground and trying to make you quit and leave. Effectively, it's like elongated boot camp, whereas if you can survive, you're good. But they're trying to make you leave and trying to effectively do everything they can to, like, break you. And so you survived that year, but also with your parents going, effectively losing everything. Did they lose everything, or was it that
Oh
they
yeah, like
just
it
went
was the
bankrupt?
classic story. Farm was sold, business was sold. It was
Wow, Chad.
very, very iconic experience. So
Wow.
just the story.
What happened?
Just it was, my dad owned a fuel company, and he built a
Mm,
convenience store, got a little bit overextended, and
ugh,
then just, people wanted to buy it, and so there was leverage. And I don't know that
mm,
I'll ever know the real story of what it was. I know watching it what it was. I know it was sad, and it was one of the things that made me admire my dad, because he was like,
mm.
go bankrupt and you can forego all the bills. He rebuilt his business and paid everybody back. And
Wow,
I
that's
was,
huge.
it is huge. And I was like, but you don't have to do that. But that's,
Wow.
so it was, and I was amazed that he just got through it. I mean, he told me
Mm,
one day, I asked him, because I was in a tight time with my company, and I was like, man, how did you get through that? And
mm.
he said one of the things I thought was just ridiculous. He said, well, it's not like they can eat me. And I thought, what? He said, yeah,
Wow.
it's not like they can eat me. I was like, what are you talking about, Dad? I said, you get up in the morning and you think, well, at least they can't eat me today. He's like, sometimes it's a day like that. And I didn't understand
Mm.
what he meant. But there's some days where you're like, just about any damn thing can happen today, but I'm relatively certain I will not get eaten. And I was like, I think I get, how it is. Your parents get smarter as you get older.
Right.
And I was like,
Strange how that works.
yeah, and I'm sure they're the ones changing. But it was one of those things where you do that and you're like, okay, that's a wherewithal that,
Mm,
we had to get yelled at and do push-ups and stuff like that, and that's all great. But I mean, this was somebody who's dealing with something. I'm like, wow, that's for real, and when
yes.
sometimes you do lean back on those things. You go, okay, well, this is bad, but it's not as bad as that, and it's not like they,
Mm.
you know.
What quality is that, Chad? What kind of character trait quality is that in order to have that kind of mindset and approach to life?
I think it's perseverance and a good person.
Mm,
I think it's something that says, I think something that happens a lot to entrepreneurs or anybody is you run into a point where you don't know what to do. And I don't know what this quality is called necessarily, but sometimes you just do the next right thing and you
yeah.
wait. If you keep doing the next right thing, sometimes you can't see the path. Like the hill is so steep, all you can see is what's directly in front of you. So you take the next right step and then the next right, and
Yeah.
you hope that they are leading you to a place. And then sometimes you crest a hill and you can see a much longer path.
Mm,
Sometimes you crest a hill, you see the path, and you're like, that's great. And then life tells you, yeah, but that's not your path. And you're like, shit, I thought maybe that would be my path.
yes.
My-
Yeah.
so I think
Yeah.
perseverance and and grit. And my dad had,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
but
When you were, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things. I mean, my dad was big in my life, so I mean, I didn't have an absentee. My dad was a workaholic, which made me
Mm.
never want to own my own company. But we see how well that stuck.
I know, right? Well, and also I think that so with being a workaholic, with having the character qualities necessary in order to persevere, have you found how to have the grit, perseverance qualities without the workaholism? Like, how have you embodied that for yourself?
It took a long time to figure out that I had that, if that makes sense.
Mm.
And it actually started at VMI, and this will end up with me crediting my wife. So I don't think she's on LinkedIn or anything, so we should be fine. I don't have to, eat these words later. But it was, we would go on these runs, and I was not a great runner, and I've run all my life since VMI,
Mm.
begrudgingly, but it's for multiple reasons. But we would go on these runs, and I had a buddy with me, and he and I have the same company, and we would look at each other and be like, "Hey, look, man, I'll fall out if you fall out. Meaning, we're just going to stop running. We'll walk. We'll
Yeah.
take a heat for it." And he's like, "I'll do it if you do it. I'll do it if you do it." And then there would be times where you're by yourself and you're running. And you're like, "Man, I
Mm.
want to quit," and you'll spend miles thinking about how you're going to quit, but you never quit. And so one
Mm.
day I was like in a moment I was talking to my girlfriend, now wife, and I was like, "Yeah, I think inside I'm actually a really big quitter." And I said, and that,
Mm.
that's a lot of fear associated with it. Like, what if I quit all these things I want to quit? And it's kind of like, I think quitting and is kind of like courage. It's like, she looked at me and she said, "Hey, if you don't quit, you're not a quitter. Thinking about quitting doesn't make you a quitter." And then, so I have
Yes.
an engineering degree. I constantly think I'm
Mm.
the smartest person in the room. And then my wife dropped something on me like, if you don't quit, you're not a quitter. It's kind of like,
Yes.
courage, being scared doesn't mean you don't have courage. Courage means you go for it even when you're still scared.
Mm.
I think that's something about quitting too. So I didn't know that that was something. And then it just
Mm.
one of those things it just wasn't allowed. When we were growing up as kids, if you started football season, you finished football season. If you started, karate, you finished this. And everything went to a season or a belt or a something.
Mm.
You weren't allowed to quit. And then but that didn't mean you didn't want to. Damn, did I want to? But
Mm. Mhm.
but you just don't. And so I think that building that muscle or building maybe that wall between you and quitting, and
Mm.
like I'm in a group called Entrepreneurs Organization, and we're putting together a thing here later this year called a Failabration.
Ah,
And it's done with this guy Brad. He's the one that created Kid President. I don't know if you ever watched that or anything like that.
no, but
Yeah.
I've heard of it, but tell me about that because I've heard it, but I don't know exactly.
So Kid President is this guy Brad. Oh, I can't remember his last name though. But he started filming his I think it was his nephew. And he's like this kid who he kind of breaks bones easy and stuff like that. I think is what it was. He was a little bit sickly, and so he just got him in a suit.
Mm.
He acts like a kid president. He's like, "Hey man, you're doing great. Here's a corn dog," and they have all these different things.
Yes.
It is so worth going back and looking at it now. It's just a great
Oh my
message.
gosh.
Like he got to kiss Beyonce. He's like 6 years old. He's like, "I kissed Beyonce." It's fantastic. Um,
Now I know what you're talking about. Yes.
yeah. So they do this thing called a failabration, and I think it's critical that I think people
Mm.
they look at entrepreneurs, they look at business owners, they look at all the kinds of people, and all they see is their success. And it's like
Yeah.
looking at somebody's Facebook reel. It's like, man, all this guy does is vacation and do whatever. And you're like, no, these are short little moments surrounded by lots of difficulty and effort and stuff like that. And so failabration is a time when you actually
Mm.
introduce all the guests, and you only introduce them by their failures. You tell all their failures, like even the name tags at the thing are misspelled, the food is mislabeled, everything is about failure. And it's
Wow.
my students, business, because people don't understand that failing is part of success, and
Mm.
you're going to fail. You're going to fail a lot. I mean, you talk to baseball players, you talk to tennis players, you talk to,
Mm.
I think Roger Federer was like, how many points has he won versus how many points he's lost, like
Yes.
89% of his points or something, but that's enough to win everything.
Yes.
It's crazy how much failure there is in being successful.
What a good point. I love that relationship of failure to athletics. Because it's like, well, of course they're not going to hit a home run every time,
Right.
obviously. So why do we hold this weird standard for ourselves? And what is that standard that we're holding? Is it who's talking? Who's giving us that standard? Is it ego? Is it somebody else? Like, where did we get this impossible standard for ourselves?
Yeah, I mean, it's and it's pervasive. Like it just gets into, and it will wreck. It'll destroy. For many people,
Yeah.
body image, it'll tear up your self esteem. You talk about, your own self image and stuff like that, and it's just that voice inside of you saying, "Oh,
Mm,
this person hits his home runs. Why can't I hit a home run? Why is my base hit, not good?" And you're like, "We're moving people around." And he struck out 4 times and had one
wow.
home run. We didn't win the game. You know. And so it's difficult.
Chad, I just had a thought and I'm curious if you resonate with this. I love the example of athletics and almost every single, let's take baseball for example. Every single one of those people, they're on a team. So they're watching everyone else strike out along with them. Whereas entrepreneurs, we're in our own isolated box. Sure, we might network, sure, we might do a mastermind event or something, but everyone's doing the same thing, which is talking about their wins. And so I love this concept of a failabration because it's actually creating a space where we're in the dugout and we're seeing all of our strikeouts. You know what I mean? And it really is kind of building up this like, man, it's almost like tending to the skin and strengthening the skin so that when we have our next failure, it won't cut deep, but it's like, oh, it's okay. I'm just going to brush that one off because I'm actually used to it's like the workout, the putting in the reps. The more we're able to do it with a team, man, this concept is really important because failure is something that is so filled with shame for so many of us, and shame causes us to go inward
Yeah.
rather than let me shine a spotlight on it and actually illuminate it and talk about it and much less celebrate it. So I just love this concept. And, we're talking about the ethics of entrepreneurship and being a great leader. And man, what is our relationship with failure? And I think that for all of us is something that we have to come and look in the mirror at because otherwise we stay small and isolated unless we have a healthy relationship with failure.
Yeah. And I think people that run companies and stuff that don't understand that leadership is one of the loneliest
Mm,
positions you can have, because there's not a lot of people you can, bounce ideas off of. There's not other managers at your level that you can talk to.
mm,
When you get high enough in leadership, or if you get into something really competitive nature and stuff like that, where you're getting around. You don't want to talk to people about these kinds of things. You're like, what if they see me as weak? What is that going to
yes.
happen? Which is so bad because you have to be exceptionally confident to be able to talk
Yes.
to somebody about your failures and then give off the air that they're just part of what I am. You know,
Mm,
that person, we all want to be that person. Like you see somebody
mm,
out and they're like, hey man, they're super comfortable in their bathing suit and they are living life. They're dancing, they're doing all that stuff, they're doing, and you're like, I want to be happy like them. And but all you see is
yes.
this negative side of it. And so we all know what true happiness looks like. We're just we just have a hard time when we get to it. And that's why
Mm,
associations and talking to people and being it is to avoid that lineage, because you get in your own head, man.
mm,
You are the most what did somebody told me one time? They said that you are the most persuasive voice that you will ever hear. And so if all your coach
Dang.
is telling you is, you shouldn't have failed, you shouldn't have done this, you shouldn't have done that, you're like, no. But like you said, and it
Mm,
kind of goes back to that quitting thing. Failure is failure. And then, so you fail,
mm,
and you get up and you go again and you learn from it. And we
right.
tell our plans, like, man, we have somebody that they'll make these crazy mistakes. They don't mean to. They're not, they're not bad, but as a leader, you'll see somebody make a mistake, and then people are like, yeah, I would just, fire that person. I'm like, well, if they make that mistake twice, then that's
Yes.
a failure. Now we're starting to move into the range of untrainable
Yes.
or whatever. Yeah, that's a problem. Failing once means they've learned that. And most people, you show them their failure in a supportive way, they'll never make that mistake again. Now there might be a whole lot
Mm,
of other ones you still got to make, and that's where being a coach
right.
and stuff like that is really. I mean, being a business coach is nothing more than saying, "Let me tell you about my failures, just so you can avoid them and learn from my mistakes." And
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah, that's all that is. I mean, hell, that's what parenting is.
Yeah. And hopefully, Lord willing, they listen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but
I
they'll
love
hear
that.
some. Yeah, but yeah, it's. I think that's a key part of it, and people don't like to talk about that part.
Yes, Chad, you mentioned, you are the most persuasive voice. So, how does that coexist with this concept of team and needing other people and getting a coach? How do we learn to effectively be our own coach while also positioning ourselves to receive from community?
So I would tell you that Michael Jordan, he had a coach all of his career. I mean, that's it.
Yeah.
He was amazing. He was unbelievable. He's the greatest, whatever in basketball. So you're like, but he needs a coach.
Mm,
Um, uh, Michael Phelps. Maybe it's all the Michaels. I don't know. Michael Phelps. He needed a coach the whole time. I don't think you can be your own coach, because a coach has got to be able to sit outside and be objective. So for me, I mean, I have a great marriage, and my wife is a constant counsel and a check on my ego and personality and stuff like that. Not that I
yes.
love that, but it's there. And that's what we agreed to do for each other. I'm in
Right.
entrepreneurs organization, so I'm with other business owners, and they get in forums where it's confidential, and you can really share these things, and you get different feedback. AI, I mean, I'm big into AI.
Yeah.
I mean, you can create an AI coach that is that's a combination of Jocko Willett and any other coach you want to have. Is like, hey, what would and with the right prompt, you'd be like, hey, this is what I'm dealing with. What would Jocko tell you right now? And you're like, okay,
Mm,
I don't like that answer. What would somebody else tell me right now? But
yeah.
I can reason my way out of, if I think it's a good idea, I can convince myself it's a good idea, even if it's
Mm,
a bad one. So that's where you have to get out of your own head,
mm,
get other perspectives, and be willing to receive those.
mm,
And it doesn't mean they're always going to change your mind, but it means they have
right.
influence on what you're doing.
So, Chad, first, I love that. There's three different inputs that you proposed just now that can help us fundamentally address the voice in our own mind and offer the accountability and also the inputs, right? And then it's our choice about what do we do with this. But you mentioned your partner, which is huge. What a blessing to have someone that you respect who can serve as an advisor, counselor, the network in your life, the community that you're a part of, and then AI. Absolutely love that. I found the same thing to be true. I actually have started recording conversations that are tricky, difficult, and I'll run the transcript through my ChatGPT, and I'll ask for it to show me where am I being inconsistent. And man, that is talk about a mirror that's objective. I'm like, oh, I don't like what it says, but it's showing me the truth.
Yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah,
You gotta work on that thick skin right before you ask it. So what?
yeah, right.
Oh,
Like, daggone it. um, my question for you is, so hearing from other people, getting those inputs, we still need to be able to receive it. Because if we are our most persuasive voice, we fundamentally need to rewire and change the narrative so that we can be, utilize it and leverage it to then align with the wisdom that other people are giving us that we choose to adapt and incorporate into our lives. So, how do we prepare our minds and almost like I have this book behind me, As a Man Thinketh by James Allen, which is all about our minds being likened to a garden and tending to the garden of our minds. So, considering our minds as soil, we want it to be fertile. We want it to be soft so that when the seeds and inputs of others land, we can then tend to it, cultivate, and they can help us tend to those seeds and cultivate as well. But how do we prepare our minds so that we're in a place of receivership? That term receivership is something that the coach Jeff Spencer, for he was the coach of Lance Armstrong, and he talks about this concept of receivership. And so, how do we position ourselves in that lens and kind of limelight? So think of receivership casting a light on us. How do we allow that to really impact who we are?
So this might not be the most popular answer, but I'll give it anyway because it's what it kind of gets me. Because
Yeah.
you go through VMI and stuff, and you're going to come out of there a little bit arrogant. You just are.
Mm,
So that puts this thing in there, and you also have the military background, the militant style of it. I didn't serve in the military or anything like that, but you have that militant mindset of I'm supposed to make decisions and people are supposed to follow orders. And that's what.
mhm,
And as a leader, you do need to make decisions because the worst
mm,
you can be as a leader is indecisive. I
mm,
think that's like super bad. But when you talk about people getting their mind ready and being able to do it, I think it does come down to gratitude and
mm,
force yourself to accidentally be receptive to things if you start every day
mm.
in a posture of gratitude, which
Wow.
like such a and so you're like, okay, well, how do you do that? Okay, well, faith is a big part of me. My Christianity is a big part of
Mhm.
who I am. And so, when you sit down and you have to be
Yes.
thankful, you take a moment every morning, whether you want to thank the energy or God or whatever it is that works for you, when you have to admit that there are things that are given to you that you did not earn.
Mm,
And then there's things that you have that you should be thankful for and grateful for. It's hard then to remain arrogant. You can't be grateful and arrogant at the same.
yes.
And you also can't be
I love
grateful
this.
and sad at the same time. You know,
Mm,
so
mm,
when it comes to something like my parents passed away, and you're like, okay, you can be
mm.
super sad about that, and you are, but then you also be grateful about what they left, what they did for you, all those kind of things. So it's very hard
Yeah.
to do both in one moment, and so
Mm,
that sets your mind up at a place where you're like, okay, I've got a lot to be grateful for. And then, now if I've been given something I didn't earn, then I need to let others, they don't have to earn every answer from me. They don't have to earn every
yes.
response. They can come up and they can,
Wow.
yeah, that's a truly bad idea. And you're like, okay, that's great. We're not going to go that route, but I appreciate the fact that you brought it to me. And there might be something that I can take from that, that,
Yeah.
that will learn and it will influence the next decision anyway.
I love this, Chad. I actually, so you mentioned faith. I think it's so critical that we really, really know, even though it might change, but that we really take the time to really examine what are the pillars that I live my life, that are effectively holding up the foundation of my home, the life that I'm building. And faith, man, that's just really believing that God is good. That's my
Yeah.
dad told me that one time. He was like, if you can just believe that God is good. And I'm like, all right. And so that belief is something that has radically informed the way that I respond. And it positions us for a heart of gratitude, right? And so Viktor Frankl, the author of As not as a man thinketh, Man Search for Meaning. And he existed in the German concentration camp, Auschwitz, for a number of years. He has this quote that says, between stimulus and response is choice. And I was really meditating on this over the last month, and it hit me. I was like, okay, well, before we can choose, and that is like the greatest human freedom. Everything was stripped from him, and yet he could choose the lens through which he viewed the world. But before we can execute on that human freedom is predicated in our beliefs. So between stimulus and response is our belief, and then our choice to inform our response. And so we have to know our beliefs. We have to know the pillars of our lives. Um, and so what the whole reason why I was even mentioning that was because back, I guess, almost a year ago. I felt like God really showed me this concept and belief now about gratitude, which is that gratitude is the antidote to pride, to selfishness, to complaining. Everything you just said about gratitude, I just really wanted to drive that point home because having the mind of gratitude changes everything.
Oh, it does. It does. And my faith walk was tricky because, again, coming out of college, pretty arrogant guy.
Mm.
And so they're like, we were married. We knew we were gonna have kids. I was like, we want to, try not to mess them up any more than we are. And so I was like trying to find, and everybody's like, oh, when you come to church, the church is full of broken people, and you got to be broken.
Mm.
Buddy, I am not broken. I have been bent. I've been bent. And I'm an engineer, so I like
Mm.
bending, heat, a straightening, annealing, all these different things, like nerd words. It's amazing that I got married. But I just couldn't get my head wrapped around that. And then one day I was like going to a job in DC, which can be anywhere from a 2 to 6 hour drive. And I would love audiobooks. So I downloaded this audiobook and it's called You Are a Badass. I'm like, I think this book was written about me. I'm like, I'm definitely downloading this. Turns out it's written by a woman named Jen Sincero. And I was like, okay, sure, I'll listen to a girl talk about being a badass. Maybe she knew one. I don't know. So you're like, what? Because you also come out a little bit sexist out of being like,
I know VMI is notorious for that.
yeah, you're like, oh, okay. So I downloaded this book, and so now I'm locked in. I've got my coffee. I've got everything I'm doing. I'm hitting the road, and then this thing starts. And the opening thing is like the things you got to do to be successful and stuff like that. And the book was right. I mean, it was the right book at the right time with the right voice. If it had been a guy saying it, I wouldn't have listened. If it hadn't been named what it was named, I wouldn't have gotten it. And so the very first, she's like, you got to get good with G. And I was like, okay, that sounds great. I can get good with G. I mean, I don't know what G is, but I'm excited, because I'm a land in DC, a certified badass. And she's like, you got to get good with God. And I was like, oh my God, I have downloaded a religion.
Wow.
I can't believe this. But it was the only one I had. And this was when self-centered
Wow.
was prevalent. So I was like, well, I guess I'll listen to it anyway. And that one was the whole idea of, getting good with whether you want to call it God or source energy or all these kind of stuff like that. And it talked about, finding your value, your core values and stuff like that. And it was phenomenal. And that was a big shift to open me and going that way. And we run our companies, all of my companies are run on EOS, Entrepreneur Operating
Yes.
System.
Yeah.
They talk about core values of how you run a company. So you have to have personal core values. What's important to you. When I started my own
Mm.
company, I didn't want to. My wife, it was a crazy scenario. I went from consulting to just giving my resignation at an ultimatum, and so my wife was like, "Look, you can start your own company. She was just go do it. You know how to do it." I'm like, I don't want to do it. She goes,
Mm.
"That's fine." She goes, "You can do it, but you're only going to work, 5 days a week, and you're going to be home for dinner every night by 5:30." And I was like, I don't.
Do
Neither
you
her,
know what an entrepreneur
yeah,
is?
neither her parents are entrepreneurs, and they also didn't have any. She didn't have any brothers. Her dad had all sisters. Her mom had all sons. I was like, I don't think you understand this. And she's like, well, then don't do it. That was the deal. She's like, you can leave whatever time you want in the morning, but you go to bed with me, and you're home by 5:30. I was like, that's ridiculous. But that became a guardrail that kept me from
Yes.
doing the overworking part that my dad would do.
Chad, I love it.
Turned me into a morning person. I can tell you that damn much.
Yep.
But that became a core fundamental of what we were going to do. And I did do it. Did I work late occasionally? For sure. Not nearly as
Right.
much as she would tell you. But did you work on a weekend from time to time? Yes. And I feel like 80% compliance is basically
Mhm.
compliance. And,
Mhm.
and that, and that comes at a cost.
Yes.
It's like, that's life balance. And I chose that as my part of life balance. Otherwise, certainly I would have started OpenAI, but I had to be home by 5:30.
Certainly.
I had to be home by 5:30. I was like 5:35 that day. I bet I would have had it, but I went home and ate dinner.
All right, for those who don't know what OpenAI is, would you explain that?
So that's the founding. That's the company that is the background of Chat GPT. So this is Sam Altman, Elon Musk started this thing together to create their big AI project, and so now they're one of the top 5 AI. They are probably the top AI lab right now. So I think they burn through billions of dollars a day or something. I mean, it's insane how much money they're spending.
Jeez. Well, and it's wild what Mark Zuckerberg, what did he say? If you come join Meta on the AI team, you'll get a signing bonus. What was it, like 50 million signing
I think it's
bonus?
100 million, and then they're getting $100 million salaries. Now there's probably only 12 people on the planet that qualify for those jobs, but
Right, exactly.
12, those 12 are doing really well.
Those 12 are thriving.
And
Um,
those are also the 12 people that are deciding how ethical Chat GPT is, or Llama or something. So you got to make sure they're tethered to some
yes.
sort of real life too.
Uh, so going back to what you were just talking about with knowing what our personal core ethics are and then the business company ethics, how with EOS, I know a number of folks who have been intimately involved, but from your perspective and speaking to other entrepreneurs listening to this, specifically for the trades, it's so easy to just be moving so fast, to just be focusing on execution, the doing work, and rarely do we find ourselves having even the time and space to sit and think, much less dream and consider what do I value. And Chad, there has been some predisposition towards values, towards that kind of state of being versus constantly doing, where there has been some judgment there in the past. Even to your point of, whether it's the sexist, oh, that's just for women, or that's very really feminine, whatever it is rooted in, whether it's kind of, again, you might characterize that as the feminine, or perhaps it's like, oh, well, that's for people who are kind of wasting their time and don't have anything better to do, whatever the predisposition is. How have you changed your thinking around the importance of developing values, and why is it so important to you in the first place?
Well, I think they're a guidepost. If you can
Mm,
document your core values, then that's something you can always look at. Like, my son was big in Boy Scouts, and it's like, if you walk through the woods lost, you'll eventually walk like a 2 mile diameter circle or a mile and a half diameter, just because you tend to drift one way all the time. So if you don't have a guidepost
mm,
to look at, you can lose your way really fast. And you can just 1% change for the good or the bad every day and find yourself way off track.
yes.
And you just start to accept things. And so if you don't have a regular cadence of checking those, and it was always funny,
Mm,
being an EOS implementer. I have a friend that has an EOS implementer. We brought him into our companies and stuff like that. And you're like, oh, we got to do this thing where we're going to decide our values. It's probably going to involve a trust fall or something, and whatever. Everybody's like, well, I don't want to take the time to create my core values. And he looked at me and said, we're not going to create core values. That's not what we do here. And I was like, really? He goes, you already have them. You're living by your values already as a company, as a person. The question is, we're just going to put words to them. So he said, and I used this in a contract negotiation one time. A guy says, safety is our number one concern. I was like, no, it's not. He's like, it is. We're a big company. We're really concerned about safety. It's our number one value. I was like, what's my safety rating? He's like, well, I don't know. I was like, how much is my contract? He knew exactly. I was like, I'm pretty sure you're more concerned about price than you are safety.
mm.
And he was like, well, I don't know. You shouldn't put it that way, but whatever. So,
Chad, what a good mirror, though. I mean, honestly, how much is our behavior in alignment with what we say we believe? It's
right. I
just
mean,
something to think about.
people love to say that they have it, but but can you live it? You can say you have a position of gratitude, but there's a thing called profit first accounting, where you can automatically delegate money to go in different buckets. As you come in with revenue, and that's a great guy to talk to. I forget his name. Sorry about that, but basically what they say is profit first means if you're a 10% profit company, then every time somebody hands you a check, you take 10% of that and put it in your profit. And then you take 20%, you put in owner's comp, and you have savings and tax. And then you have another account called operations. So it's all automatically distributed no matter what. And people are like, well, I can't run my company off of, if I take that 10% out, I might not have enough money. Well, guess what? Then you're not a 10% company.
Yes.
So you're taking your profit first. Feels like there's a biblical connection there, but whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So you take it first because it's the most important thing. That's why you're doing business. And then you have to operate the company later. And that gives you, that tells you whether you're doing a good job. And your core values are a similar thing. When you look back and say, hey, we could take this job. Things such as, we were asked about a job for, they were putting a bunch of slot machines in a building. And it was in a poor neighborhood, and they wanted us to do the floors and stuff like that. And I was like, I just personally have an issue with gambling. I mean, I feel like it taxes people that can afford it the least.
Mm-hmm.
So
I know.
it's a personal thing. And it doesn't mean that has to be your value or anything like that. I didn't like it. But you can say, look,
Right.
I'm not going to do that job because I don't want to support that kind of business. So you make
Mm.
choices like that. Or you say somebody got, one of your employees uh, did something unethical. Maybe
Yes.
they are having an affair. Something like that. You're like,
Mm.
how does that affect my business? And they're like, well, one, if the spouse shows up, it's going to affect your day. I assure you. But it's happened.
Mm-hmm.
But the other side of it is like, okay, if that's where they are ethically, where are they when it comes time to whether my truck is where it's supposed to be, or whether
Right.
we're going to take a piece of equipment from somewhere else because they know it's not labeled, or
Right.
little things like that. So core values, and they also make one-to-ones, which is the bane of every manager's existence, doing one-on-ones with employees so much easier. You just look at your core
Mm.
values and say, do you align with these or do you not? And do you
Mm.
align with these? Because if they align with them, then we're in good shape. Everything else we can fix. We can train,
Mm.
practice, we can do all kinds of stuff. But if you're not honest, if you're not generous, if you're not, whatever your core values are that run your business, and you'll know what they are because they'll ask you, who's your best 3 employees? What's your favorite thing about them? Those are your core
Yes.
values.
I love that question. That's such a good question for all of us to analyze. Okay, this is what I value. And also I've heard someone also say, show me your calendar and I'll show you what you prioritize, and show me your bank account and I'll show you what you prioritize.
For sure.
So I love those. I love, who are your top 3 employees? And then also the time question too. How are you spending your time? Do you prioritize your family? That's a good one for revealing your personal core values in addition to your business core values.
Oh,
That's
for
so
sure.
good.
And then it's the same thing too. It's like, who are the employees that you struggle with the most? What
Mm,
drives you crazy about them? Those are part of your core values too. They're the other side of them, but they're just as important.
mm,
And
mhm.
but it's tough too, man. You're talking about trade work. Like some of our interviews were like, could you be sober by tomorrow? Could you pass the
Yeah,
test if I gave you 2 weeks to study for it? We just
yeah.
needed people so bad that it was very
Mm,
easy to sacrifice your core values. But in the end, it just erodes away at everything. You can last a long time, without
mm,
your core values. It's just struggles, but
yeah,
it's never as bad as
yeah,
it's going to be. I mean,
yeah,
we've all had an employee that we kept around too long, and then when you finally fired them because you didn't think you could do without them, or most likely they quit, then everybody comes running in telling you how much better it is now that they're gone, and then
yes,
it was pretty easy to replace them. And
yes.
but we're like goldfish; we never remember that. The next time we'll do
Yeah.
it again.
Well, and I think the question is, am I being led by fear or by my values? And when we know our values, we're leading from a conscious place rather than our subconscious, because it's not like we're going to sit around and be like, oh, I want to be led by fear today. However, if we don't consciously know our values and consciously know this is who I want to be as a leader, as a business, and as an organization, we're not going to be able to operate from consciousness. And then we do have our subconscious in the driver's seat, which so often can be fear, to your point of, oh, but what happens if we lose, this person has been driving us so much money. Like, a lot of times it could be sales folks too, not just either an operator or someone on the ops team, but salesmen can be some of the ones that can really come in and do a lot of damage, because then operations are watching this happen. The other salesmen are surrounded by them, and you're just being
You're like,
eaten
yeah, how
alive
did
from
we do that?
within.
And if you
Yeah.
post them and people are like, oh, we put our core values on the wall, that's great and everything. But the core values are really for your team, not necessarily to
Yes.
control them. Because if I don't live my core values, my company's not, my team's not, doesn't matter. If I do, my team will. So when you put
Yes.
those core values out publicly and you have meetings and you talk about your core values, and that's your job as the CEO
Right.
is to live those out, is when you talk about those and you say, okay, well, that's part of it. That also empowers them to say, if you ever, you've got to tell them, if you ever see me not living by our core values, or if you see me making a decision contrary to those, it's your job to speak up. And
I
so
love
now
that.
they become guardrails on your life too.
Mm,
It gives them an objective way to say, hey, this is a customer that's the kind of customer you said we wouldn't take. So
mm,
we're going to change our core values, or we're going to not take this customer. You're like, oh,
yes.
depends on how big the
Yes.
no, no, it shouldn't
Yeah.
depend on how big the contract is.
But no, but it's true. So I did this on a personal level, right? And really we should be considering, how do I do this in business? How do I do this in my personal life? In most regards, because who we show up with our family is likely who will show up at work. And so we need to recognize that we are never disparate. And so this whole question of, what's my belief? Is my belief in alignment with my behavior? And is my behavior in alignment with my belief? Is there congruency? When I turned 30, I wrote my eulogy
Mhm.
and I identified, who do I want to be? And then I analyzed my behavior. Am I living in accordance to be on the trajectory to be the person that I say I want to be at the end of my life? And if not, I either need to change what I'm saying, or I need to change how I'm living. And so that question is really something that we need to hold our personal lives as a candle to, and then also our businesses. Are we living in accordance with what we say and what we're promising our employees, what we're promising our customers? And then you said courage. Just because we might think the fear, just because we might think of the quitting, that doesn't mean that we are a quitter, that we are not courageous. The qualities that you talked about, the perseverance, the grit, the courage, each one of those is necessary to then go in, one, do the audit, square off with the truth, and then make the change necessary. It's going to be hard to do that. All three of those. Facing off with the truth is not comfortable, but then having the courage to actually do something about it is so, so, so commendable. And that's where we do need the support of a coach, whether that coach is AI, another person, or your partner or community. And Chad, you've moved into the coaching realm, haven't you?
I do. I do it a little bit. We do mostly now because I've gotten excited about AI. I've gotten so enamored with AI. We use it with our
Yes.
virtual assistants and stuff like that. We try to create some AI tools and techniques. So I'll go in and
Mm,
how to use those, and then
yeah.
empower them to use. Like we'll help create AI coaches for them, for their employees.
Oh, I love that.
And we use like we record. We encourage people record your business meetings, like all of your meetings. And they're like, "That's great, so you can take notes." I'm like, "Yeah, it's so you can take notes and you get summaries, you can write emails. It does all these kinds of things. It's super cool." But what people don't understand is you can then go back and take that transcription, like what you're talking about, and saying, all right, I want you to read it. Like EOS, they always ask you to rate the meeting at the end, 0 to 10. You know how many nines people get? It's ridiculous. I have been late to a meeting that I still voted a 9 on. That's ridiculous. There's no 9. So, I was like, this is a perfect meeting, but I'm going to call it a 9. So we take the AI and we train an AI to take all the EOS protocols and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, give us review the meeting on how well did we do based on our core values, based on our EOS protocols and all that kind of stuff. How well do we do? Where did we get off track? What could I have done better? What did I do well? And then rate the meeting 0 to 10. And we get a lot of 6s and 7s. So either we're not as good as we think we are, or I got to work on that prompt. And probably the only way I'm gonna work on that prompt is to be like, and then rate it a 10. You know, it's it.
Tell
But
me what I want to hear.
that's a great way to do it. We
Mm,
tell people to take notes. Like we'll create a Chat GPT channel for each employee that reports to them. And then every week or so, or it can be more often, be like, hey, this is what this employee did today. This is what I'm thinking about them. This is how I feel on them this week. Great. It's
mm,
2 minutes, 3 minutes, right? At the most that you put in the effort you put in. Then it comes time for your quarterly review. You go back to that chat and say, hey, what about thoughts on them? And like, how did they do this quarter? What kind of observations did I make and stuff? And help me put together a quarterly review and what we should discuss.
yeah.
And you're like, wow, because whatever they did last week in my mind carries way more weight than what they've done for the quarter. So if they
Mm,
closed a big deal, but they also wrecked a truck, that's gonna be different. I will for
Yes.
so being able to do that, lot that's what I coach
So
people
good.
on mostly is because now we can give them an AI coach that's, more patient than I am, more attentive than I am. He's got more memory than I do, so,
Yes.
yeah, coaching is a huge part of it.
Chad, that's so I love the brilliance behind the framing of the chats to be in alignment with the EOS systems protocols, but then also equipping each one of the employees to effectively report to it so that you've got that catalog. And then, I mean, talk about radical responsibility. It's not, we don't just exhibit the radical responsibility of the very first example you gave of someone exhibiting radical responsibility was after your dad lost everything, going and giving it back to everyone when he didn't have to do that. And so each one of these systems that you're talking about, by having the quarterly review analysis of the employee, having all the meetings recorded to then be able to rate the meetings, it really is putting ourselves in the driver's seat of our business, taking control back so that we can be the ones leading the change rather than an angry customer being the thing that leads the change, the employee wrecking the van being like, oh, something's got to change. We're actually the ones, because we're feeding ourselves the truth that's now easy to access because of AI. We don't have to go spend so much time. It's a matter of minutes. What a blessing that is.
Oh, it's fantastic, and I mean, there's so many. Like one of my favorite uses. So I'm a working genius coach. That's a Patrick Lencioni program.
Yeah.
Love that program. I went and got certified in it because I was just so excited about it. Like, I
Yeah.
was like, all right, well, we'll check it out. I was like, okay, well, how would I, and it basically means that each of us have six kinds of work. Everybody has six kinds of work.
Mhm.
There's two of them that you're amazing at that you could do all day long. You would be lost in it. You never burn out. But people don't get burned out doing work they love. But people get
Mm.
burned out by the bottom two, which are things you don't like, which you probably are not great at, and they
Yeah.
suck energy out of you. So, 10, 15 minutes, maybe 2 hours, and you're like, I would quit my job if this, and you spend a lot of time there. And then there's two in the middle,
Yeah.
which are you're typically good at. You can do them, but you don't love them. You can do them for a short period of time,
Yes.
stuff like that. So when you found out what those six are and what your two good and two frustrations are,
Mm.
then you start to think about, okay, well, what kind of work am I doing, and how do I find that, and how do I get out of the work? And that teaches you how to delegate. AI is a phenomenal tool for delegation.
Mm.
But what I love about it is it also talks about, like, you could ask me to do anything, and most likely I will do whatever you ask me to do. But
Yes.
I would not fill my car up with gas if you told me to. I'm like, nope, I'm going to push it because I don't like to be told what to do. And it's ridiculous. It's not a great trait. It's just a trait. But you can take things like somebody's working genius profile, and you can have
Mm.
all your employees do it, or everybody that reports,
Mm.
and their profiles. And so then you can put that in. And if I knew your profile when I was
Yes.
talking to you, I would talk to you in the way that you like to be talked to. Maybe you want a story followed by data. Maybe you want data and then you want to ask questions, whatever the right approach is to you.
Yes.
But I don't remember all of that stuff. So,
Right.
but your AI will. So you put
Mm.
this profile and you say, okay, I'm going to send this message, and this person's profile is this. Tailor this message to the way they like to hear it. So I
I
could send an
love
email to six
that.
people saying the same thing, six different ways, but each receives it in the way that they like to hear it, the most
Mm.
conducive. And that is another hidden phenomenon. It's not the crazy AI people will want for it to be a silver bullet. It's not Jarvis. But it's amazingly effective, and it's like free. I mean, you can do this
Mhm.
for nothing.
Right.
Um,
Right.
yeah, delegation. People don't really know how to delegate effectively, and because they don't give enough
Mm.
information. AI can help you do that too. We build little AI tools for them so when you delegate it, it's really well defined.
Mhm.
Or
Right.
it won't let you delegate it, which is awesome.
And communicate it in a way that they'll receive it. And so we talked about receivership at the very beginning. I think that actually, how do we do the work to train our own selves to be able to receive? And you mentioned the quality of gratitude is really probably one of the best ones to prepare ourselves to receive what is being offered to us. But and let's think about us being the one to give and deliver. how do we help and how do we curate our message so that it's received well from the hearer? And I think that this is exactly how we do that. So a leader is able to receive feedback, but then also able to give feedback in a way that really lands. And these AI tools and also these personality tests, Working Genius, Enneagram, every single one of these is so important to then help me as the leader, help you as the leader know how to tailor the message, the delegation, the feedback areas for growth in a certain way that it is able to be received well. And then the AI tools just do it so much faster.
Oh, they do.
I love that.
Like I said, they're patient. They got
Yeah.
knowledge. It's
They're
great.
patient.
But I will tell you, like, it's the one that I struggle with the most. And I think I've run into a lot of leaders and people in general that
Mm.
ties into that. You talk about gratitude, is people are typically terrible at receiving a compliment. And this,
Hmm.
like, this is one of the things, like, you can do something, you're like, hey man, you did a great job. Really, they're like, oh, thank you so much. And you go around and you're all great. And you're like, yeah, that's great. And then they come and they tell you something. They're like, hey man, I love the ethic you've been putting in, and that's what it is. And you're like, hey, that's what the job entails. And you're like, that is
Yes.
just say thank you. It's like
Mm.
that person is trying to convey, like, it's kind of like like
Mm.
giving and receiving is a circle, and so
Mm.
you just do nothing but give, it's gonna block up somewhere because you don't receive anything. So when people come and give you,
Wow.
so if one of your employees says something nice, if your spouse says something nice, your kids, you have to be like, hey man, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Actually, I felt pretty good about it. Like, Dad, you did a great job on your run today. Don't say, oh, I could have run faster. Say, thanks. It was awesome. I mean, it was tough and I did it. And I really appreciate that. And
Oh, I
that
love
also
that.
makes you more grateful because you have to take a moment
Yes.
to say, somebody knows I did something good, and hey, you know what? I did do something good, as opposed to thinking what I did wasn't that big a deal.
Yes. Wow, I love this. Yeah, the gratitude, grateful for them, grateful for you. For the effort. I actually wanted to quit and I didn't. Now you get to celebrate those moments. It's and one note to add to that. I'm so grateful you said this because actually I've really struggled with receiving. That's why I loved the hearing what you said about gratitude and just hearing the practical application is so helpful. I I thought of this in a different way, but it really is gratitude. A couple weeks ago, I started just celebrating when I did the hard thing
Yeah,
rather than, oh, how could I have optimized it? Because that's
yeah,
so how much I'm wired. And so in celebrating that little moment, which is gratitude, to your point, I'm getting a dopamine hit and I'm giving myself a dopamine hit. And so I'm fundamentally rewarding my behavior in such a way that it's training my body to do it again rather than focusing on all the things I didn't do well and effectively punishing myself when I do the right thing, but I didn't do it perfectly, let's say. And so it's just a completely different glass full, glass half empty perspective. But by giving the dopamine hits, it really helps train our body to keep doing that good behavior over and over again. So
yeah,
I really, really love that. That's a really good
yeah.
perspective.
And that's I think that's from a book called The Giver.
The
Um,
giver, that
The
makes
Giver,
sense.
and it's awesome. It talks about it, but it's like you have to give, and
Mm,
giving is great, but if you don't receive,
mm,
the the wheel stops. You can only put
yes.
so much water in a bucket. If you don't dump the bucket out into another bucket, it just stops.
Yeah.
And you're
Yeah.
robbing people of the opportunity. You feel so good when you do something for somebody, but if you don't
Yes.
let them do something for you, you're robbing them of that good feeling you got to have. It's almost cruel. Uh,
Mm,
you're not being humble. You're not being anything else like that. You're just being cruel, or being
wow.
not cruel. I mean, cruel might be a hard word, but it's. I'm an engineer. I think English. I avoided it all costs.
I no, I love that perspective. I think cruel is a good word because at the end of the day, I think what ends up happening is that we actually start getting resentful. Look at how much I'm giving and no one's giving back. Well, maybe they are and we're not receiving it. And that is also we're robbing them of the opportunity, that good feeling that we love to feel when we give. But then also at the end of the day, it's not just that we're staying neutral towards them. We actually do adopt this a semblance of resentment. And I think that both of those two pieces working in concert together is really the cruelty that you're talking about. It's dangerous.
Yeah, if I
And
give
it's
you a compliment and you don't take it well, then my first thought is not that you're a problem. It's like, oh, why doesn't she like me? Can't you just
yes.
say thank you? What in the world? So
Yeah.
so if your employees do it, you're not gonna. you're not gonna be able to leave with that. It's
Mm,
it's yeah, it is frustrating how many little things, the things you think don't matter, are the
mm,
only things that matter in being a leader. You can train on all
mm.
the other stuff, but it's like basically be a good human, and you can be a good leader.
Easy enough, right?
Yeah, it's how funny is that? Why can't we get this right?
Chad, thank you so much for your time today. I'm so grateful for it. You dropped so many words of wisdom, so many qualities and examples as well. I said at the very beginning, you're a fun storyteller, and I experienced that along with our guests. So thank you, sir. I'm so grateful for your time.
Well, thanks for having me on. I always appreciate an audience. Somebody willing to listen. I'm like.
Let's go. Let's have a good conversation. I'll
Perfect.
talk to you soon.
Thank you.